All right, it's going to dive right into this one. So it may be a little choppy, but probably won't run too long. I always say that, but I never know where this is going to end up. I watched a video this morning, and I'm going to share a little bit of it here with you for this video. And it really brought several things together, and I'm kind of putting it together in my mind as I'm speaking it here. So just kind of bear with me if we jump around a little bit. So I've done research and in the past watching videos, reading articles, historical documents and whatnot, and there's clearly some anomalies in the history as we've been taught of America. And one of the things that it really jumps out at you when you start to study it and look at the consistencies across the country and around the world is we've got structures here in America that match structures from around the world that are just, absolutely spectacular. And and even looking at it, trying to determine how in the heck did that structure get built? You know, the magnificent cathedrals, these what are now government buildings, the churches. There's just something there, and I never really thought much about it, just like most people, until it's kind of brought to your attention. And the first time it got on my radar, where I just kind of had that aha moment, was a few years ago, and I was watching one of them, and and there was I don't remember if it was a picture or a video. Probably no, it was a picture because this was still during horse and buggy times, and this was over in France. And so here's this picture of people, riding around the arch, the Triumph in France. This unbelievable structure with ornate decorations, carvings, whatever in it. And I'm looking at it, and I'm watching these little horse and buggy go around it. I'm like, there is no possible way that the people whose greatest technology is still dirt roads and horse and buggy built that arch. This predates something, right? And then the more I'm looking at these different structures, and honestly I haven't researched it a ton, but I think there's something there. And so in this video here, we're going to watch a little bit of it, and then I'm going to kind of give you my narration on it. But it lays out, where those structures might have come from, or who really built those structures, and it discusses the possibility of, and I've seen information on this too, of other peoples that occupied these lands that we're not being told about. And and I should have probably pulled this up again. I hurriedly put this together. I didn't take a lot of time preparing. And one of the things, another tell that got my attention a while back when I read it was there was a speech that Abraham Lincoln gave, and he makes a comment about how do we benefit from or learn from or aspire to something to the effect of those giants buried in those great mounds. And it's like, what the hell is he talking about? So these like little tells that we have out there. And then, you look at some of these structures, the doors are like 20 feet tall and the latches are like 15 feet up. There's no possible way a regular human being our size could hit that lever. So there's all these little bits and pieces of evidence, these magnificent structures, the potential of giants, and then in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there's all these world fairs that were used to supposedly maybe cover that they to introduce us to these structures in these cities. That hey, we're having these great world fairs. We had to build all these ornate. They're not real. They're out of plaster, whatever, Paris, and then we had to tear them all down after the World Fair. And then along with all of the fires that occurred in all of the cities across the country around the same time. And so, and I've said this before, I think that there have been other great resets, okay? We're heading for a great reset. This is not the first time they've run this play. I talk about them running plays on us all the time. This is a group of people that has existed throughout however long, and they're continually bringing the newer generations into this group with the specialized knowledge, this ancient wisdom, this power structure, this control structure, right? And so it's not unreasonable to say, okay, well, have they done this before? And I think they have. And here's where, I'm raising an alarm bell. Maybe that's why I was in a hurry to make this video. So let's dive into some of it. I'll get into some of this other stuff, why I'm raising an alarm bell, and some other things that I'm seeing today that lead me to believe that it's possible. And oh God, I hope I'm wrong. I've never wanted to be more wrong. That with recent events, the next great reset, the catalyst for it, it could be days or weeks away or months, not years. And that means absolute devastation of the current structure of humanity, including a lot of us. And this may not be a worldwide reset. It may just be certain Western cultures, ours being one of them especially. So, and this video does kind of bring forward some of what they're talking about. That's what really got my attention of, here's some things about the history. Here's some things that's happening today that may indicate that it's the same people, same methods, running the same plays, and here we are again. Okay, so let's watch the beginning of this. It's about 5 or 6 minutes. So bear with me. This is good stuff. I highly recommend. I'll leave the link in the write-up of this, but this is a great video. There's only about a couple of minutes of it where I'm kind of going, towards the end of it, where one of the ladies is talking about some things that it's a little far out there for me to grasp and say, yeah, I think that's possible, but let's just forget that for now because I'm not going to cover that in this video. So, okay, so let's jump into this. Seven lies agreed upon. Yep. It's written by the victors.
From every corner of the earth sits glorious architecture. Magnificent structures that allegedly have no connection, yet very similar designs. This style of architecture, riddled with elegance and purpose, can be found in your neighborhood or in the middle of nowhere. And when you walk in, you are overwhelmed with a vibrant feeling of serenity, a feeling that modern-day architecture does not provide. The concept of...
Real quick on that, modern-day architecture, part of the plan, CIA run, make art ugly, make building ugly, make design ugly because they don't want us connecting with our natural sense of wonder and awe and power. So they've disconnected it from the music at different resonance to the architecture to the artwork. It's all designed to be ugly so that we don't... what we're taught is beauty. It really isn't beauty. Some of this is real beauty. And we're disconnected from that. So, all right, let's dive back. I'm going to try not to interrupt too much on this first chunk of video here.
The timeline that once existed, where structures were created with a completely different purpose. Yet, when we take a look back at who they told us built these structures, considering the timeline and the lack of technology, the story begins to crumble. And that story was taught to us all during a time when we were too young to question it. But when you shine an unbiased light upon the history books, you'll quickly uncover the lies of his story. But even before Rockefeller and his goons started the Board of Education, they already had our ancestors. And anyone who questioned their narrative would soon find themselves an unwilling resident of the original indoctrination camps. And where did they come from? Where did we all come from? If knowledge is truly power, then maintaining such power must rely on the absence of knowledge. Are you aware that every major city in America experienced a great fire? Candle fires that turned stone to dust, leaving behind a crime scene that resembles a war zone. Let's take a giant step back. Perform our own investigations. Question the history that was written by these victors. With a growing nationwide lack of trust for our leaders, it's time to discover the extent of the deceit and where the lie truly began.
What's being kept from us is huge. And talking earlier about the architecture, I really like to encourage people to do their research in their own communities because you really do not have to go far to start chipping away at what they've told us and ask yourself a question, is this even possible? Is it possible that X building was built in the 1890s? And they're giving us timelines of like a year. It was built in a year. They want us to believe we didn't have the technology, that we were low tech, and yet we're building all of these amazing structures. This disparity between what the narrative says
All right, I think I got the video issue resolved. Let's jump back into it. Just picking right back up where we left off.
Was built in the 1890s, and they're giving us timelines of like a year. It was built in a year. They want us to believe we didn't have the technology, that we were low tech, and yet we're building all of these amazing structures. This disparity between what the narrative says and what's actually there.
You have places, cities in America that look as though they were constructed in medieval Europe, when nothing was here and people showed up and just got started building from what we're told.
Yeah.
One would assume that they would build with the means that were available to them. Wood, nails if they were lucky. What we get is this narrative that people were showing up and really making do with what they had.
What we learn about in school is there was nothing here. This land was free for the taking. The only inhabitants were wild Indians, and we built everything here. Everything you see in this country, in North America, because we're talking about Canada too, was built by us. After we got here, nothing here. They had to change the narrative. They had to destroy the evidence. They had to come up with an explanation for who built this, why they built it, when they built it. And they had to do that for a lot of buildings.
We are told that during the 1800s, the consensus of North America was low, extremely low, too low to justify the infrastructure within the timelines they've provided, too low to have the experience or knowledge on crafting these glorious buildings.
They're the most exquisite buildings I've ever seen, and there was only a population of a few thousand people at that time. And then I'm looking and there's mud roads and wooden sidewalks. And then I'm looking at this building that is just, it could be out of Paris or Prague. It's not computing. And so I'm realizing there again, there's a whole bunch of stories that have to be dug into, rethought, reconsidered, and in some cases completely discarded.
We no longer build like that. How does that happen in a realistic timeline? Wouldn't you be progressing year after year to have incredible buildings? Today, we would be building massive pyramids, massive courthouses that last forever. Instead, we have the complete opposite. And they're very cheap. The tools have upgraded supposedly, yet our construction has gotten worse. It's completely backwards.
There's evidence of a worldwide culture that existed in the not too distant past, and the evidence is everywhere. It's an interesting thing because, like, I've spent a lot of my life looking into ancient history and traveling around the world searching into the past. And it isn't until recently that I realised that it's actually, I don't have to travel to Egypt or anywhere. It's all right there in Sydney and in London and in San Francisco, and it's all around the world. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. What you got to do is look at the civilization you're living in with the right type of eyes, and you're sort of looking around your city and you're going, well, hang on, what's this building doing here? And why is there a building just like that in the Philippines? Why is there one in Japan? Apparently Japan's borders were closed, weren't they? Why are we finding what we're told is Greco-Roman style architecture in every country on earth? Was it really Greco-Roman style, or is it evidence of a culture that existed, a worldwide culture that existed right around the world in the not too distant past?
If I took a picture of this building behind me and asked any of these people, where do they think this building is in the world? I guarantee you most of them would say Rome or Europe somewhere. But no, it's right here in San Francisco. We have buildings like this all over the country, and they want us to believe that they were built in the early 1900s or the late 1800s with horse and buggy. And there's just no way that's true. These buildings were built by the prior civilization, master builders, the old world order.
This is the architecture I'm talking about. You'll find this anywhere in New Zealand, Australia, Hong Kong, North America, South America, all over Europe. It doesn't matter where you are. This architecture is replicated. The weird thing is, they akin it to being all built around the 1870s to 1900 mark. So all of the world just shit out of nowhere at the same time. There was nothing before it. Does it make any sense? I don't think antiquity is a long time ago. I think this civilization went just before us. You know, the Edwardians are supposed to be around the time of the First World War. So within grandparents' living memory, yet we know nothing about them. It's the control mechanism that covers it up with the education system. They got the news, they got the narrative, they got, you know, the mainstream to tell you how things are, but the reality is completely different. History goes to the victors, okay? Somebody invaded this place and took over a beautiful, through jealousy, using trade routes, using the sea, and they took over this place. They covered all of this fine architecture with their iconography. So there's literally been a cover-up of history more than one way.
If you look at Capitol buildings all over the earth, they look the same. They do. They've got columns, they've got domes. It was not random. And every story we're told in our historical narrative about how a place got started was some guy was the first settler there, bought some land, subdivided it, sold it, and pretty soon you have a city. But the whole narrative is based, especially in North America, that there wasn't anything there, and we built it all.
You could look at it, the whole building was a work of art. So there was obviously some pride that went behind that. It wasn't just about making money and throwing shit up as fast as you could.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. This just goes on and on. It's an excellent narrative. It's worth watching. They just show examples after examples after examples. They go into the architecture quite a bit, even showing the connection, the possible connection. If you look at pictures of the old World's Fairs, some of these buildings, it shows them completely illuminated in ways that really don't make sense to us today. And this is predates, you know, Edison and electricity and all of that. So that ties into the sort of free energy in the ether. And all of this is happening around the late 1800s, early 1900s. You got the rise of Rockefeller, the oil companies, you know, the Industrial Revolution's kicking off. And I don't think it's a surprise to anybody. We've probably all seen evidence of this where narratives are created to protect the financial interests in order to maximize profits. So an example, like oil, Rockefeller spread the myth that oil is from, you know, dead dinosaurs, you know, fossil fuels. So there's a finite amount there. And we all believed it. I believed it growing up, and you still hear people, it's still widely used, fossil fuels. And it's like, oil does not come from dead dinosaurs. And in fact, it comes from the earth, and they've gone back to dry wells, you know, years later, and those wells have produced oil again. So it's a material that continues to be produced. So it's not as finite as our system wants us to believe, because they want to charge us as much as possible. So they get into a lot of that. You saw a little bit about the orphan trains. So there's a lot of stuff going on around the late 1800s, early 1900s. And I've gone a little bit down the rabbit holes of Tartaria. I don't know. I just don't know enough about that to tie it into this. Is that the culture that created all of this? I have no idea. But clearly, it appears that there was somebody here in America before we settled it. That's what the evidence is pointing to. That's where it takes you. You have these, as Lincoln referenced, these mounds where the giants are buried. You have these orphan trains. Well, where are the parents? And I think in here it shows the World's Fair with incubator babies. So there's all this stuff that we don't really have good explanations for. And if you want to try to stitch it all together, it looks to me like it could have been a great reset. So whatever was here before, they wiped out. However they did it, you saw cities in rubble. Were those cities inhabited by a different people? I don't know. I'm looking for answers too. But we know that it looks like some of them were substantially bigger than us, 12, 15, 18 feet tall. And is that where the technology came from? And wherever the technology came from, it was worldwide. And it was here in America too. And all you have to do is look at those structures. We did not build those structures, is how that looks to me. I don't see anything And we haven't built anything that even closely represents some of that. And so there's some questions there. And, so you got the orphan trains, you got the giants, you got the structures, you got the World's Fair, you got the city fires. There's a lot of stuff. Great reset, right? So I'm gonna fast forward here a little bit. We're gonna do, I think, a couple of more fast forwards and get into a couple other things, because this then kind of touches on to some things that have happened today, and then I'll finish it off with kind of, bam, here's where we are. And a lot of this correlates to what we're going through now. All right, so let me find this spot here. I think it's about one. And I mean, this goes into the blimps and the technology. It's just great. I highly recommend you watch it, but I'm not going to sit here and go through the whole thing with you, because that would take way too long. So I'm just trying to hit the high points that relate to the overall subject of a great reset. So let's see. Let's start here. Let's try this.
Stone, because it doesn't melt. You got to be an idiot to think that these forest fires are going to be melting brick and stone. Use your head, guys.
As they are busy dismantling it in the...
I think right before that they were saying that in order to melt brick, you've got to be at a temperature of 200 degrees, and the average fire from just wood and forests and natural stuff like that is about 1,000 degrees. So there's no way that these city fires could have melted these bricks and destroyed and leveled. I mean, look at these, it's just, yeah. You look at this stuff here. That was from a fire? Really? I don't know. I mean, maybe, I'm no expert, but maybe, but I think there's other
3D reality that we experience. It was part of a program to dismantle the old world and shock us into an acceptance of basically the new world order.
And that's why I wanted to speak to you today about the new world taking shape around us, about the prospects for a new world order now within our reach.
It's the new order, Babylon banging down your door. The war pigs hungry for war. We rally the troops and red sword, once and for all. It's the new order, Babylon begging for your souls. They coming and they want control. Yeah, they coming. We burn their system to the floor, once and for all. Listen, it's time to wake the fuck up.
So you had what I would call the reset of history according to a very specific narrative. I mean, it didn't change very much. And using the media like they do today to publish it, print it, this is what happened, these are all the details, these are all the people involved, we got it down on record. So again, they're saying, okay, everything was built out of wood, like a Hollywood movie set. Didn't hold up, it caught fire. So we came in and we built all of these beautiful structures to make sure they wouldn't burn down again. And that is told repeatedly.
You look at any major city, they suffered this same fate. And I don't think it's a simple matter of, oh, they were just so stupid. They didn't know. They put candles all over the place and let their cities keep setting on fire. The stone courthouses, the stone banks, into smithereens. Now in Jacksonville, we actually had a fire where there are firsthand accounts of people who were escaping the fire, and once they thought they had escaped to a safe distance, were watching the fire, because that's what people used to do back then. Wasn't much of a fire department. They just said, well, it's burning, just time to take photos and watch. And what they actually did was they were sitting up on a hill watching Jacksonville burn. They said that things on their persons started spontaneously combusting. Pocket watches, buttons, things that were made of certain materials were combusting. This was happening back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Cities would spontaneously combust with no sufficient cause, no suitable explanation. But they're in a covered carriage. What happens? Materials on their body are still spontaneously combusting. Out of nowhere, sparking into flames. Now, how could that be the case if this is a local fire spreading to anything that it touches. These people were hundreds of yards away, if not more, from the fire. There weren't embers falling on them that they couldn't see, because like I said, they were already in the cab. So this is just one instance in Florida, and you can go look up your own city, the closest major city to you, and you'll find this same fate.
You look at destruction from World War I, World War II, it looks exactly the same. So these weapons have been around for a long time.
The biggest factor to 9/11 was the erasure of evidence. Erasing the evidence of the wrongdoings of the government, the financial institutions, you name it. You had evidence being destroyed. What do they call it? Jewish lightning? For lack of a better word, insurance fraud, destruction of evidence. Those two typically go hand in hand when we're talking about buildings falling down out of thin air.
Seattle burned down, the downtown. 2 months later, Ellensburg, which was at that time a major city in central Washington territory, burned down. 2 months after that, Spokane, which was another major city on the eastern flank of the territory, burned down. And when I discovered that, I just went, hold on a second. Like, there's something else entirely going on in the backstory.
It's like they want to get rid of these beautiful structures, and some are still in use. But the ones that are inconvenient to the narrative, they just want gone. And there's also probably a component of the energy grid in all of this as well, because they keep what they can use, they keep what benefits them, and at some point they determine, okay, we don't need that anymore, for whatever the reason.
Part of the story of the fires is that the fire chief wasn't in town at the time. He was away on some conference. And so the command structure was broken. So the mayor at the time in Seattle was the one that was calling shots. And he was making decisions that they should go in and make what they call fire breaks between buildings, meaning actually bringing dynamite into buildings and blowing them up. And that's acknowledged. And that's acknowledged in Boston, the Boston fire, in city after city, what's called a tactic to contain fires. And then they often say, well, look back in retrospect, maybe it wasn't the best idea. Well, what was causing these fires and what was causing this type of damage in the first place needs to be examined. So when you have a broken command structure and somebody else is calling the shots, that's really curious to me, because that's the same thing that happened in Lahaina.
The wildfires that swept through Maui are the deadliest in U.S. history in more than a century. On social media, people are speculating about what could have caused the fires. One trending theory is that the fires started due to an attack from a directed energy weapon. They're weapons like lasers that use energy fired at the speed of light to damage or destroy targets. According to the U.S. Government Accountability Office, many countries, including the U.S., are researching their use.
Yep, they flipped the police chief Pelletier, who was from the Vegas shooting. They made 10 emergency declarations all about Uncle Billy's and all about Banyan Drive and all this stuff. And to believe it or not, the Sunshine Law, where they removed the Sunshine Law or suspended it, it wasn't in these 10 proclamations that they really promoted and really blew up all over the news. It wasn't in any of them. It was in this quiet little Affordable Housing Act on the side. Truly, it does look like only the places they wanted. Safeway didn't get hit. The gas stations didn't get hit. They knew what was going to go where. It's either they did it from the top with the laser energy weapon, like others say, or it came from the bottom. But one thing was crazy is that over 24 hours later, they were still letting the fire burn. The fire was blowing so fast, the wind, it said it moved 1 mile in 10 seconds. Only thing I would think in my head could move 1 mile in 10 seconds. Some kind of boom one time, the whole place.
With the fires from Maui, I mean, I've got these rows of cars that are just completely burned.
Honestly, none of it looks like a fire. It looks like it's been destroyed with like some weapon or something from an angle.
Just completely destroyed by a direct energy weapon. Just buildings sliced in half. You have melted cars, you have melted everything. I mean, it just completely looks like a war zone.
Send a laser from a directed energy weapon against the community and then step back and say, oh, that was natural, or too bad, so sad. And all those people are left homeless and they don't get any help. And people aren't being allowed to get out of there. When it's happening, they're jumping in the water and poof, and everything looks like, cars are burned out.
All right, can stop there. We got one more section to cover. And I've said before, I'm always looking for tells because they run plays. They've been doing this stuff for a long, long time, and maybe the technology changes a little, maybe the scenery changes a little, but they run the same play. And that one where the fire chief happened to be out of town. Well, just happened to be out of town. They do that all the time. I mean, just in my last video, the history of the early 20th century, where during McKinley's assassination, he survived, he's in the hospital, and Teddy Roosevelt's like, oh, he's going to recover. This is so great. I'm so convinced that I'm going out of town. He goes out of town, McKinley dies. So these guys, once you start to study them more, you just see these as plays. This isn't random history, just unfolding in front of us. They're orchestrating and implementing an agenda. And, showing the shots of, World War II versus the burnt out cities, versus 9/11 and all that. There's a similarity there, and I loved that they juxtaposed those together during this video because it can really help maybe people to see that what we're experiencing now, we're reliving a history, and it's not a random history. We're reliving something because they've done it to humanity before, and they're doing it again. And so all of this weather warfare, the direct energy weapons, slicing up Lahaina, and some of these other things that are happening, they're preparing just like they did back then with the World's Fairs and burned out the cities, and then the orphan trains, they bring in the new populations. Bringing in new populations because they've eliminated the old population. That sounds a lot like what's happening on a bigger scale with all the immigration coming in here. Why are they bringing in all these people and treating them like they're more important than us? Because they know the next plays in this. They know that eventually there's going to be a reset and not everybody's going to make it to the other side. And we're targeted for removal, just as the giants were. And whatever that was that came before, that they wiped out when they got here. That's my concern. Okay, so that's why I felt the sense of like, man, I just can't, I got to say this. I got to get this out. All right, so let's, one more little section here to go through, three or so more minutes. Yeah, and here she's talking about how some of these structures are like fossilized giants that are hundreds of feet tall, and I don't know about all that. I mean, I'm not even going there. We got bigger problems than to try to figure out if this mountain used to be a person 1,000 years ago. Like that, see? Yeah, maybe. But that's not the point of all this. Okay, let's start here.
Vast emptiness with a fully intact city, and nothing's out of place except that there's no people. And so what it looks like to me is they went into a city that was already there.
Empty. Nobody around. So odd. Wait, wouldn't the Tower of Jewels be visible somewhere on this map? Remember, from the World's Fair in San Francisco? It shouldn't be, because that was 37 years after this photograph was snapped. Oh, yes, of course. It looks like it's already there.
With the World Fairs, it does seem that the purpose of them was to provide us with a new narrative and bring the population to them, just overwhelm them with this fantastical realm that they were now going to internalize and then burn it down in almost like a ritualistic fashion to sear this into the consciousness of the people.
The populating of the Americas was not as authentic, organic as people might have been led to believe. There was a large system of what people have termed orphan trains, incubator baby farms. A lot of these were hubbed in World's Fairs. You had incubator babies at the World's Fairs. Buy an Asian baby, buy a Filipino, buy an African baby.
I think part of it was repopulation. I think part of it was early child trafficking. Premature children were in these incubators. You see pictures of these, nurses in their uniforms in a room filled with baby incubators, with people paying admission. With our increased awareness today, we've got things like Planned Parenthood and other things going on. There are companies that mail kids. There's a bit on my business where somebody can place an order for a child based on eye color or whatnot, and they get delivered. That's not good. And I think it's the same idea that there's this harvesting of humans going on without our knowledge and awareness, and unspeakable things happening to children that got its start very early on because the same families are behind it.
And you would see this mass migration of orphan trains and orphan boats, and you're like, first of all, where are all these fucking orphans coming from? How many orphans were there in the 1800s? Why?
Yep.
So everybody's learning this thing at this young age, and everybody has to go by these new set of structures and new set of rules. They have to learn this new history that everybody isn't really agreeing with, and then anybody that's not agreeing with, they have to go to the insane asylum. There is the orphan asylums for the children and the insane asylums for the adults. Now all of a sudden, John D. Rockefeller comes out with the Board of Education, and all of the children are sent to a public schooling system to learn their new history. What better way to trick a society than to take their children at a young age and teach them exactly what you want them to know?
If people just realize that if you don't understand the past, you'll repeat it over and over again. And it prevents people from going to progress in the future. And us as a collective species, we have to get to the nitty-gritty of what really happened, what our true potential now is as a collective civilization. Because we can't rely on those people anymore.
All right, that's it for the video. Like I said, man, it's a great watch. Ties a bunch of stuff that's going on now to our history and possible connections. It's maybe the same power groups running similar plays as they've been doing for a long, long time. And with that, and so I want to touch real quickly on kind of where we are. If that's true, and if, as Klaus Schwab said years ago, we need a great reset, and they know that people are going to be angrier with Operation Lockstep. And we've seen all these plays with the release of the virus and you name it, the factories that have been blown up, the trains that are derailed, the explosions, the bridges that have been it's just been carnage since they got hoodwinked Biden into office in 2020. It's just unbelievable. And so it appears that we're headed towards this great reset, right? And I think that part of the what a lot of us are hoping for, at least myself, is, well, if we can get Trump into office, I don't know. I'm hopeful that he can wipe all this stuff out. But I mean, let's be realistic. He's likely a part of this in some way, and he's playing his role. And that's just sadly the way it is. And a lot of people don't want to accept that because they've really fallen in love with the character, the person. And believe me, I want to see Trump in office. I want to see him do more good. I believe he genuinely does care about us and want to take care of, all the issues that are plaguing this country and destroying this country. But the reality is that he may not be able to get very far. And with him selecting his cabinet right now, some of the choices he's making have kind of concerned me and kind of indicating that, okay, here we go again. Again, we need George Washington. We're just going to get Ronald Reagan again. And he may hold a couple people accountable just to try to, help others accept this reality. But at the end of the day, and this is all I've been asking for, is a stay of execution. If we get him out, it at least potentially, no guarantee of this either, but at least pauses or slows down them running these plays on us. And it gives us time to try to respond in whatever way we can to try to stop this. And my concern is just this thing is just too big, their power is too great, and they're already so far in it that we're not going to stop it. Because if you look at what they've done in the past, where they've just displaced all, civilization, they've leveled cities, they've, changed technologies and wiped out any history of those other technologies, and they've invented these fabulous lies that they then teach as history. And they're doing the same thing now. And they were successful then, and there's a really good chance that they'll be successful now. So, and that's the point. Last week, we start lobbing ballistic missiles into Russia. They've been trying to use Russia. That war was started to kick off the Great Reset and help eventually lead us into World War III, nuclear war. That's where they're going. It didn't just randomly happen. This was all done right on a timeline that they're working with. And so last week we came really close, and we may still end up there. It could go hot next week if, who knows what the lunatics on our side, which is the side of pure evil that's orchestrating all of this and using America as its, face, they may decide to respond with a nuclear-tipped warhead into Russia after what Putin did with his ballistic missile. And that was an impressive show of his military capability. Man, you watch those videos. We can't stop that. And he's got thousands of those. And they're already pointed at all of our major cities. All he has to do is flip one switch, and they're all off. From submarines, from land bases, from you name it. And we've got, nuclear weapons by the just hundreds, just pop, 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 pop. And of course, we have the same thing. And so we'd light ours up too, and that's pretty much it. That's the end of humanity. And then out of that comes the Great Reset, because there will be some survivors. And so that's my concern, is that we're really close to this thing. And I don't know. I'm hearing, again, it may be just part of the fake narrative to kind of keep us complacent while they put us right up to the point where they can launch this thing and kill billions of people. And, that narrative is that Trump is working behind the scenes with Putin and what's-his-face in Ukraine to try to, get the stand down and back this thing off and come up with just end it. We got to end this. Otherwise, that's where we're going to go. And so then the calculation is, if he's really trying to do this and he's successful, now this global maniacal power structure is going to continue trying to position us even during his term. They're going to do everything they can, just like he did in his first term with North Korea and everything that was going on there with firing nukes and trying to blow his plane out of the sky potentially, depending on what you want to believe. So we could be in real trouble, folks, because these people have done this before. That's my point. They've done it before. Here's an hour-and-a-half video. If you watch this whole thing, if you don't get it already from what I've said, you will get it. This is just another play. And they've been doing this over and over and over again. We have not been told the truth about our history, and all they do is lie to us then and now. And so why would we believe anything that they're saying? Okay? So I want to leave this video with this one thing, and it may be just completely random. No correlation, means absolutely nothing. But I started noticing it, and maybe it's always been there, and I just noticed it because it somehow got on my radar through something I read or whatnot. But And I do remember talking about this in some of the symbology, the numerology, and the rituals and things that they run on us all the time. And I started noticing, I don't know if it was a year ago, somewhere in the last yearish, maybe sooner than that. And so I'm always looking up, always looking for the chemtrails. And I took a couple videos today and some pictures today because it's been a pretty light summer and fall. They haven't done much. And all of a sudden, the last few days, they've kicked it up a notch. But it's not just the chemtrails. What I've noticed is, and again, this is going to sound ridiculous, all right? I'm not saying it's anything. I'm just saying I noticed it. What it is, I started noticing a lot of the X's. Okay? These guys don't leave anything to chance, right? And so, the symbol X, which is what Twitter is now, right? X is also associated with death, right? So X marks the spot. And, everything they do is part of a ritual. They do it in a ritualistic way through dates on the calendar, through numerology, through spells that they cast, through words that we're not even aware of. And so I've been noticing all these X's in the chemtrails. So I just went back through my folder with all I got a folder on chemtrails on my phone. It's just got tons of stuff in there, and I'm always just taking pictures of the sky, just documenting it. It's not like it's going to do anything, but for my own whatever, so that maybe at times like this I can show this to you. All right, so here we've got this X here. This is over the last 6, 8, 9 months that I've taken these pictures, right? So here's this one. There's another one, but this one's coming across it. There's some X happening there, down there. It's kind of dissipating a little bit. There's another coming. It's not like, it's just right there, just bam, bam. There it is. And, something going on here, up here that might have happened, but there's just crisscross. There's, look at that, crisscross. There's down here, crisscross. There's another one here, right? And a little one up there. Maybe that's not really intentional. There's another. If you were down here, your field of vision were further closer to it, you'd see the big old X. So they're just crisscrossing all over the sky in Dallas. This one's not quite as obvious, a little more parallel, but you can still see an X, right? And I think there's maybe, and then this one right here, boom, boom. So that's my, holy crap, we might be close, okay? And I know this could be the talk of just crazy talk, the stuff of just crazy talk, and I get it, and I'm not, and at least I'm smart enough to recognize that. So, if I need to put my tinfoil hat on, fine. But there may be something to this, and we all know that they're doing something, and they want to transform humanity. They want 15-minute cities. They want digital implants. They want mandatory vax. They want depopulation. We know that that's their Christmas list. Well, funny I say that, Christmas is coming. So, I don't know. There's a high likelihood, nothing is going to come of any of this, right? And we're all going to continue in our normalcy bias. But part of what I'm trying to do is not just fall into my normalcy bias. I'm saying that, holy crap, people, this could happen anytime. They've pretty much, marked the spot for our destruction. We know they want to kill us. And look at what they did in history when they blew out all these cities. Where did all those people go? And they said it was fires and this and that. And then all of a sudden these orphan trains are coming in and they're repopulating. We've got the illegals coming across the border. They've got, it could be nuclear war, which again, that kills a lot of the illegals coming in, but they also have, and again, do some research. They have potentially race-specific bioweapons. They may just kill all of us that don't go along with the narrative, just like in those orphan trains. They put them all in the new Rockefeller Public Education Centers and taught them, the new history. So they got to get rid of all the people that know some of the old history. And, a lot of the migrants coming in here, they're from wherever, right? Who knows what they know? And they'll just be indoctrinated into this new world, and we'll be gone. And like I've said before, they want to wipe Western civilization out, and they want to blot it out like it was never here, folks. America never happened. 1776 never happened. Whiteness never happened. That's where we are. That's at least from everything that I have been researching, and I've been researching like crazy. And that's what I see. And so after watching this video, that's why it was so impactful. And I've had this had this position for quite a while that like this is not the first Great Reset. They've done this before. There are clues, and this video presents some very compelling clues. There's a lot more out there. I recommend, everybody go out there, find your own information, decide what you believe. And, like I say, prepare accordingly. I mean, if it's coming and we can't stop it, there's not much we're going to be able to do. There's just not. Maybe bugging out, going somewhere remote, that might save us from whatever weapon they have, whether it's they're just going to burn everything to the ground, or they're going to release a gene-specific or a race-specific bioweapon, or they're going to, what's the other one? There's another bomb besides a nuclear. Hydrogen? Is it the hydrogen bomb that kills people and leaves all the structures intact? Maybe they do that, right? I don't know. Or maybe they just level it all. But something's coming. And I don't know if we're going to be able to stop it. These people are serious. That's the point. These people are fucking serious. They're doing it. They're going to do it. And I don't see anybody stopping them. And we'll see how far Trump gets. So, these X's, man, were just like they were just a slap in the face, like, holy crap, because there's something there. We're in somewhere, none of us can predict the future, but we're somewhere significant right now. And I don't know if we're going to be able to stop it. So anyway, sorry to be all black-pilled. Hopefully you'll watch the video, come to your own conclusions, and, we just keep doing what we're doing. What we're doing. And maybe Trump can stop it. Maybe not. Maybe it's not even real. Maybe none of this is ever going to happen. I don't know. But it's food for thought, all right? It's a lot of food for thought on this one. All right, so until next time. All right, later.